We're on.
Okay. Our group is here to talk about the heroin epidemic in Youngstown and its surrounding communities and how it's become an overwhelming problem for all individuals who are suffering from addiction. Many of us either know someone or have witnessed this epidemic and how it affects families and friends and loved ones in the community. Um, what we can do as a community to help the ongoing problem of heroin overdoses and addiction. Well, there's groups available, there's treatment centers which can offer medications to help them through their withdrawals. Um, this topic is not only personal for myself, but it's also something that we see in the news and on the TV media every single day, um, whether it's locally or even internationally. It's a problem. It's an epidemic. Things are really going wrong with some of these families and their addiction problems. Um, so first, we're going to discuss the heroin epidemic in Youngstown and how it's problematic to our community. Next, we'll discuss and analyze the problems and causes arising due to the heroin epidemic. Thirdly, we'll define a solution for this epidemic and show ways in which we can help limit this problem in the city of Youngstown. Fourth, generate potential solutions and evaluate those solutions to come up with what would be the best solution for this problem. Fifth, we will select and discuss the best solutions again um, for this epidemic. And sixthly, we'll talk about our group's communication efforts, what resources we use, and how we can help spread that word so that this epidemic can be lessened in any way, shape, or form.
The problem we will be discussing in this speech is the heroin epidemic that is rising in Youngstown, Ohio. Our group's problem question is what should be done about the growing heroin epidemic in Youngstown, Ohio? The problem is very important because it has caused many tragedies and deaths in this area. According to the Vindicator, a record of 3,050 Ohio residents died as a result of overdoses last year, up from 2,531 in 2014 and 2,110 in 2013. The people living in Youngstown, Ohio, and the people that frequently visit, for example, us college students, are affected by this epidemic. This affects the people and us college students by being an unsafe environment to live in. Also, it distracts the students that are caught up in this epidemic away from their schoolwork. According to Michelle Nix from WFMJ News, since 2007, there have been more deaths in Ohio from drug overdoses than car crashes. There are not any special terms or words that are related to this problem. The heroin epidemic is pretty self-explanatory in terms of it having a bad effect on the community. Second, we will discuss the problems and causes arising due to the heroin epidemic in Youngstown, Ohio. This problem typically occurs in all areas of the community. Heroin overdoses and use of drugs has become an epidemic in Youngstown, but WKBN says the whole state of Ohio is dealing with this heroin crisis. It most often is used by young teens and young adults, but opiate addiction is also affecting middle-aged adults and older. The abuse of opiates often leads to heroin use when the opiates are not available for the addict. All races and areas of Youngstown are affected by this epidemic. The facts we gathered include a personal experience from Linda when she said, I worked at St. Elizabeth in Youngstown in an emergency department and got to see firsthand how this epidemic affects everyone. Oftentimes, I would see people revived with Narcan, and sometimes people had to be mechanically intubated to help them breathe. Families and friends would generally arrive in the emergency room to assist the patient and loved one who has overdosed. There are times the patients would actually have the drug with them in the pocket or hidden in their purse. She also added, this was observed by myself. I did not only see patients who have overdosed, but have also helped to stabilize their condition. Our community needs better resources for people with addiction to help them in their recovery. Another fact to add to this is, according to Michelle Nix from WFMJ News, since 2007, there have been more deaths in Ohio than drug overdoses and traffic crashes. The specific problems include the ease of access for young adults and people of all ages. Availability is very prevalent. All it takes is one person to know how to get these drugs, and then it causes a chain reaction. Parents neglecting their children, and children following their role models. The causes of this epidemic include ease of access, influence of others or peer pressure, a new environment such as going into college and not knowing anybody, so you feel like you should do these things. One person involved causes a chain reaction. The cause of the cause or central cause has to do with the influence of other friends, people wanting to be accepted and liked by certain groups, so they do things they wouldn't normally be comfortable with. And Linda also shared another example that said, I had a 16-year-old daughter of my cousin die from an accidental heroin overdose. She had never used drugs before, but became friends with a certain group of girls from her high school who used heroin from time to time. They brought her to a hotel party where there was heroin dealer, and the dealer gave her a free dose of heroin to try it out. When she got home, she didn't feel right and called out for help. By the time the ambulance arrived to their home, she had passed away. Now, since we have discussed the problem at hand, we need to show ways we can help limit the problem in Youngstown, Ohio. The main requirements of the solution are to give solutions that can be achieved that is not too far-fetched for the person, has to have funding. Money is a very big key factor in this. It needs to be easily accessible to people in need of it. The solution also does have limitations. The main one is its financial limitations. It costs money to provide medication and services, and that money has to come from somewhere, and the people in the solution may not have the money to pay for the solution. Time is also a limitation. If the solution is something that takes time to effect, it may not work because the heroin users may relapse. Also, the heroin user has to want to be involved, and they can't be forced to do this.
So the creation and evolution of solutions will determine whether they can be used. Our fourth main point will generate possible solutions and evaluate those solutions. So our list of solutions are communities setting up help facilities, and they would do this through donations and different organizations around the community funding this. Our second solution would be the drug Suboxone, and Chris Weller from Business Insider said that the drug blocks the euphoric effects of heroin. The third solution would be supervised injection centers. Josh from Sanborn from The Time said, safe injection sites allow heroin addicts to use small amounts of heroin in a safe environment, which potentially opens the door to treatment. Ruth Dreyfus from CNN said that harm reduction interventions with prevention programs are one of the better options to treat heroin addicts. And our fifth solution is that Harm Reduction Coalition, which is family members with heroin addicts would become educated on heroin and why it's so addictive and how to help their family member. So now we will evaluate all of these solutions. Solution 1, which was communities helping set up help facilities, is satisfactory if the money is provided. Provided help needs to also be free, and to solve the problem, they would provide free health care anytime, and they would drastically help communities with heroin epidemics. For solution 2, which was clinics providing Suboxone, which would block the effects of heroin, they would help many people if they had the money to supply the drug 24/7. And studies show that up to 60% of the drug being used has success rate. So there is a 60% success rate. Communities would find places to dispense of the Suboxone in a safe and controlled environment. And a drawback of the Suboxone is that some can become addicted. For our fourth main solution, which is the safe injection centers, they create an environment where people can intake small amounts of heroin safely and this could possibly lead to help because if they have the small injections instead of the large ones, one, they won't be overdosing, and you can slowly wean them off of this drug. It does have its drawbacks, and because people could use the safe injection centers as a place to get high. If they don't keep track of who is coming in, somebody could come in multiple times during the day, and this could just enable their addiction. There's also no guarantee that people might want the help, but overdoses would be controlled and lives would be saved. Our fourth solution was the harm reduction interventions with prevention programs. This would help people. It gives programs that give people an option to get clean from the drug if they really choose to do so. And the programs would rid the effects of heroin. This program alone could not be enough to get the users clean. They would need to use one of the other solutions, such as help and support from family. So the fifth solution would be educating a family member of heroin addicts. They could do this by going online and researching or taking a pamphlet on heroin addict treatment at the hospitals.
Okay. Our sixth main point is to discuss our communication efforts and how we gathered information and works to spread this word to our community. Our group has had several meetings over Skype to discuss our strategies and resources of information. We utilize the internet for most of our information. WKBN.com and WFMJ were two resources that we utilized. They provided a lot of the news feed regarding the heroin epidemic and how it has been affecting everyone. The businessinsiders.com discuss treatment methods such as the Suboxone and Vivitrol, and treatment centers that people can use, such as the Phoenix House and the Samaritan Village. I know that there's a couple of other places which are local. Those are international or within the United States, but there's also a lot of treatment centers here within our community. Time.com was listed ways that we can fight the heroin epidemic. There were links available to other resources which can help these individuals overcome their addictions. CNN was another resource that we used and talked about in our meetings, and how people seek help for addiction instead of going to jail. There is alternatives rather than going to jail. Take these individuals and help them get the treatment that they really need in order to overcome their addictions. So our overall discuss ways to help the epidemic in our community. We can provide them with resources, pamphlets, information, as was discussed previously, to help them so that they have some kind of a resource to get them the help they need when they're ready. Naturally, this is something that people have to want to do for themselves. They can't be forced to do this. Need to begin by educating their youth. It's very important that them early on with the effects of drug abuse and what really do. I think if we have an impact on these individuals at a very young age, we can help provide solutions to the epidemic and also help prevent it from going any further or getting any worse than what it already is.
So our fifth main point will select the best solution, and we will rank the solutions from best to worst. So the best solution would be solution 4, which was harm reduction interventions with prevention programs. The next best solution would be solution 2, which was the drug Suboxone being used to block euphoric effects of heroin. Solution 3 is the next best step, which is supervised injection centers. Solution 1, which is the next best step, which is communities setting up health facilities and communities donating and organizations funding these facilities. And our fifth best step would be families educating themselves. Some combinations of these solutions would be better than others. Solution 5, 4, and 3, which was family education, harm reduction interventions, and prevention programs, and supervised injection centers would be the best possible combination of all of these solutions. The next best solution would be solution 1 and 3, which is communities setting up health facilities and communities donating money to that, and organizations also funding it, and then the supervised injection centers going along with that. 2 and 4 would be the next best combination, and this combination is Suboxone and the harm reduction intervention with the prevention programs. The next best solution would be solution 5 and 1, which is family education and communities setting up health facilities. And the last best solution would be 3 and 2, which was family education along with the drug Suboxone. So there are different steps that need to be taken in order to put the solutions into effect. For solution 1, we would need people and organizations to donate money to fund the facilities. For solution 2, hospitals would need to stock up on the drug Suboxone, and they would also need to prepare their facilities for walk-ins. For solution 3, injection centers would need to be set up and organized. For solution 4, hospitals and intervention programs would need to be set up. And harm reduction prevention interventions would also need to be set up in the hospitals. For solution 5, families would have to do research on drug prevention techniques. Now we will talk about what steps would be most difficult to least difficult. The most difficult would be injection centers being set up and organized. The next, not as difficult, would be hospitals setting up harm reduction prevention interventions. The next would be setting up places where people could go to donate money. The next would be people actually donating the money and families educating themselves. You would overcome these difficulties in a variety of different ways. To overcome interjection centers being set up and the difficulties that come with that, people at the center would have a small part in setting it up, so that way no one would be overwhelmed. To overcome the difficulties with hospital interventions, you could call or email doctors and nurses and ask them to group together and set up these interventions with the time that they have available. To overcome the difficulties of setting up places to donate money, you could call places and ask them to donate their time and efforts. And to get people to actually donate the money, you could put ads in newspapers and magazines about the cause, and you could also you could try to get on the news and have the news talk about your cause and what the public can do to help. For family education, you would overcome any difficulties with this by urging families at the hospitals to read online about heroin, and you could also give them a pamphlet when they are at the hospitals on how to help these family members who are struggling with the heroin addiction. These solutions came from our group working together and research. So the heroin epidemic is taking lives and it needs to be stopped. It is becoming a problem in Youngstown, but there are possible ways to stop it if we all band together. While the heroin epidemic is rising in Youngstown, Ohio, the problems that it is causing are getting worse. There are solutions to these problems, but some are better than others. If we do not stand together as a community to stop this heroin addiction, it will soon be out of control, and it will control many people's lives in Youngstown. Thank you.